topic is how to connect, understand, and work like hackers. And when I spoke with Alice about the conference, the whole thing seemed really intriguing, and I was eager to get involved. And then she unveiled the topic to me, and I think I didn't quite get that I was a hacker. And I spent a lot of time, we talked about it quite a lot, and I spent a lot of time really kind of soul searching. Why do I respond so negatively to being a hacker? I'm a startup guy. I've started 5 companies. I've worked in innovation and design roles in a couple of major companies, from Microsoft to Sony in Japan. And in between, I've advised dozens and dozens of different startups. I come from the startup world. I'm a product guy. Why do I respond so negatively to the hacker term? And how does that fit into this topic? So I'll try to unpack that a little bit. This is what I think of when I think of hacker. Right? I think of anonymous. I think of people invading your space with intent to do some harm. I think of people who don't have permission to do what they're doing. I think about, maybe in a little less extreme example, I think about the lone engineer in the dark coding something all night long and drinking Mountain Dew. That's definitely not me. I think a lot about hackathons. I think a lot about this sort of startup culture, particularly the startup culture that we've unfortunately developed in the San Francisco area. I live in San Francisco currently. And this idea that we're all going to sit down and, again, drink lots of caffeine all night long and hack together something. We're going to put together a rough, kind of half-baked example of something that might have some value later on, and then we'll figure out if it's interesting. But we're going to kind of do this kind of communal thing. This is actually, it's probably the closest example to what you mean, but it's actually maybe the most dangerous, because this is the part where this starts to reinforce this kind of cowboy culture where we're designing things and getting them out there and don't really care, we're not accountable to it. And I started to back off from that a little bit and realized that ultimately what you're talking about is that hackers in this context, in the context of this conference, is hackers are entrepreneurs, as Julien was saying. And I think it's sometimes hard to separate what it means in a startup environment and what it means in a big corporate environment, especially if you're talking about a luxury brand that's been around for 50 or 70 or 130 or 150 years. But I want to dig into that a little bit with you today, and it's going to hopefully steer where this ends up. So for me, there are a couple key differences between an entrepreneur and an existing company. One is that an entrepreneur's resources are very, very different than a big company, right? It's a disadvantage. No money, maybe no credibility, no momentum, no visibility. All of those things are no market share, no consumer awareness. Those are all liabilities. Maybe you also know very little about the space you're getting into. A lot of very successful people, particularly in the tech startup world, are entering a space where they know very little about it. But that actually turns into an advantage, because they know they don't know what they don't know. And that's an important advantage, because when you enter into a space that you have a good conviction about and you have a good intuition about and you have the ability to develop and iterate and adapt and learn fast, you can ask the wrong questions. You can ask questions that the existing incumbent companies don't dare ask, because it really gets to the heart of whether the business they're building or they've been building over the course of 100 years is actually going to continue to work. Those are scary questions. They also have the ability to fail. You can start a business and have it not work and turn it into something else. You can do that 5 or 6 times. That's not just a startup thing. The risk is much smaller when you're starting from scratch. And the other thing that I think is relevant here is also what's the motivation of someone who's an entrepreneur or who's a hacker. And I think that's in particular where the word hacker stuck in my head as a little bit problematic in terms of how I self-identify. I don't think the best entrepreneurs out there, or the ones that actually develop something meaningful, that develop quality product, sit around and say, what could we design? I think entrepreneurs come up with ideas that need to get built, and they build them, as opposed to other categories of people who work for other companies and bring that idea to that company, and that company builds it. But it's that idea that I want to build something of quality because I need it, or the world needs it, and it needs to get built, and I'm going to do it. It's kind of like a skill. It's maybe no different than what would have happened if you had an idea 130 years ago to build a steamer trunk, or to build a better hinge for a steamer trunk, and to cover it with a different kind of material, and to sell it a certain way, and to ultimately build one of the 3 or 4 major luxury houses that focus on luggage today. So I think there's something about the quality of the work that we do. And of course, the best entrepreneurs turn out to be the establishment. They become the companies that you guys all work for, that we're here talking about. And there's a funny and unfortunate thing that happens once that occurs, which is that everyone forgets how to be an entrepreneur. Or when they remember with some nostalgia, because you can't operate as LVMH and still be an entrepreneur, right? Even a much smaller company that's only a couple of years old, you lose that ability to be almost reckless and almost entirely intuition-driven. You have to be driven by the numbers, and that's an important distinction. But if you think back on all the things we just mentioned, it occurs that there have been a whole bunch of hackers in the fashion space. Does everybody know that Charles Worth effectively invented the idea of haute couture? He's the first person to say, I'm actually going to design a couple of dresses, you're going to come in and take a look at them, and then you'll tell me which ones you want and which color, and we'll make them for you in that size. First person to sew a label that might be apocryphal, but first person to really kind of take that part of the industry by the hands. Coco Chanel, hacker, by that definition, right? Her background she wasn't born into one of the great luxury houses. She wasn't even born into a particularly important family, right? She worked in a bar, she sang in a bar, she was a seamstress. Suddenly, she's partly, if not largely responsible for radically changing the way women dress, getting rid of corsets, thinking about the human form. In fact, the perfume business that we have today worldwide, especially the luxury perfume business, probably has a lot to do with Chanel No. 5 and her intuition, her entrepreneurial approach to putting this fragrance in a bottle and in the hands of women around the world. In fact, any designer, I think I have Tom Ford up here next, any designer that was hired as a 20-something-year-old as the new creative director for some existing luxury house, who everyone said might have the ability to take it somewhere interesting, but also an equal number of people said that's just going to be a disaster. These people are hackers. These people are entrepreneurs. Monsieur Arnault, for decades now, has been radically, along with everybody else who's adopted some of these same models, this idea of luxury groups. He did not come from the luxury world, right? He was not a fashion designer. But he has radically changed, and his organization and every other organization of this category has radically changed the way the luxury business works, which has radically changed even the creative of the luxury business. And I think that's really important to understand. I don't even think we fully realize the impact of those changes. Those changes have maybe happened at a time when without those changes, some of the organizations that are now part of LVMH might not have survived the last 30 or 40 years, or might not be in a position now to be global leaders in luxury. In fact, without those shifts, maybe we would have lost a big part of this industry. Maybe this conference wouldn't be happening. Maybe most of us would be working somewhere else. But maybe along the way we introduced some other challenges too. I think actually what I'm getting at is the entire history of luxury has been a whole series of reinventions, right? Every season, every new creative director, every fashion show, every new strategy, every business model, the reaction to every change in culture, the rise of the middle class, early on in the history of luxury, and also the sudden disappearance of the middle class in most cultures. All of these things have had a profound impact on how we approach the luxury business, but the luxury business is actually really good at this, right? The luxury business is really good at taking a big risk and saying, you know what, it's time to reinvent Gucci, let's put Tom Ford in the driver's seat and see what happens, and then everyone's ready to either declare that he's a genius and it's the future, or that he's completely messed it up and Gucci is dead. You guys can all have your own opinion on that. I think what happens is that the entire industry is actually geared up around reinventing every season, every couple of years, every new store opening. Everything is constantly being thrown out the window and reinvented. But also, the reality is you have to do that because at a certain point, every system succeeds to the point where it fails, right? It's just the nature of things. We succeed to the point that we're born, and we live to a certain point successfully, and then we die, right? Businesses come and they go. They might take hundreds of years to make it through that cycle. They might take days. More often than not, they're ending sooner and sooner. The cycle for companies to start and have even a massive impact on the world and then go away is surprisingly short, and it's getting shorter and shorter, especially in the tech sector. If you aren't constantly reinventing, you're witnessing your own demise and actually driving yourself there. So if we go back to LVMH and some of those ideas of what makes up the business of the luxury business, the business side of it, and not the creative side of it. It's an important thing to be constantly reinventing. So I really do think that this entire industry, as an outsider, this entire industry seems to me to be very, very good at reinventing itself and starting over and being radical about ideas and actually risking everything. And doing so on such a regular basis that it's on the calendar a couple times a year, at the very least on the creative side. So what I don't understand and what I struggled with, and I wanted to actually come up with a list of things that you must do in order for the technology side of this to keep in step, but I don't think it's that simple. And I don't quite follow in an industry where everybody's used to and actually brilliant at reinventing themselves. Personally and creatively and on behalf of the business, even reinventing the business models. Why has technology taken so long to catch up, and why is it still lagging behind? And somehow it feels like it's even more retrograde in the very heart of the luxury business. So France and Italy in particular. If you look at luxury brands and you look at luxury retailers worldwide, the experiences that you find online from French retailers, for example, and from Italian retailers are nowhere near being as avant-garde as their product assortment is. Right? These are brands that are defining the very cutting edge of street fashion and of high fashion, and you go to those websites and the experience is like being on a website in 2004 in the United States or 1995 in Japan. And I struggle with why the technology seems to be the barrier. And I think part of it is that it feels like a bigger problem. So I think what I wanted to get to today was the technology aspect is no different. Right? If there's something you don't know about the business that you're in and the whole world is moving in that direction, whether it's globalization and entering Asian markets, or whether it's getting into the perfume business when no one's really done that kind of thing before, or thinking about the adoption of credit cards and rolling out POS systems in your brick and mortar stores. Those are all solvable problems. And I think something about technology is mysterious enough that I think the industry, more often than not entirely, I think it's getting better, but the industry here has said, well, we don't sell, our product categories don't make sense online. Right? Our price points don't make sense online. We have a customer who wants a really special experience. And so consequently, they end up with a pretty unspecial experience, despite everyone in the world having endless data points, and even in France, that people buy things online, they buy things at high price points online, they expect and appreciate a high quality online shopping experience, and they're very, very happy to spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in a single cart item on their iPhone app on the way to work. And we've had plenty of examples of that or a couple of important examples of that in the French market in particular. Entreprendre invented the flash sale model that everyone's using around the world. Highly successful company. Net-a-Porter, that's a very successful company, great experience, high quality, like super luxury items that are delivered to people in their homes, great packaging, people love it. Why does it stop there? Why does it not go beyond that? What's the mystery? I'm so fascinated by this question that actually, having come here for this event, I'm staying the entire month. And if you're interested in this topic, if you're interested in it personally and you want to just grab a coffee and talk about it, or if your businesses are interested in this topic because you wonder why it's taking you so long to adopt some of this technology, I'd love to just really dig into it. I literally am spending the month here to understand this a little bit better. And it seems to me that it goes now way beyond ideas of e-commerce and search engine optimization and conversion rates and all the sort of standard bread and butter kind of boring e-commerce stuff. I think the world needed to figure that out 10 years ago, and did. And I think the luxury business has caught up to that baseline. But I think what's actually most important and most exciting and profoundly interesting in this particular space is that suddenly the technology piece of it has almost nothing to do with e-commerce anymore. It has to do with the ability that you have as luxury brands to communicate with, not just study the data from, but actually literally communicate with and fully understand the needs of your customers wherever they are in the world, whenever they want to, and whenever you're in a position to help them. And to understand what they want, and to give them all the things that you've done for decades or 100 or more years, which is exceptional product, the legacy of the brand, the lineage of the families behind them, the sense that I have something that the world wants or that other people don't necessarily have access to. That's the very stuff of the luxury business. And now we're in a position where through this technology, if we take a half step closer in that direction, we suddenly get back to what's effectively the couture business, right? I can be nowhere near an Hermes store. I could not even know where there is a store. And I could tell you that I am interested in this product and I would like it to be customized in this way. And I would like you to know who I am. And I would like to have that relationship. And I would like to feel as good about that as I do when I walk out of your store with the beautiful orange bag and the box and the tissue paper. I want the online equivalent of that. And you have the ability to deliver that. And that's about as close as we've been to where luxury started as we've been in 40 or 50 years, maybe longer than that. I mean, we haven't had that focus on just the pure quality of experience and quality of product since let's say the 40s and the 50s. Beyond that, we started to move, when we hit the 70s and certainly in the 80s, we started to move toward globalization. We started to move toward a commoditization of luxury, both in the experience and on the product side, and everything is everywhere. But now we have the ability to actually deliver for those top customers far more of what your essential brand promises and exactly what they're expecting from you if they're buying from your brand. And I think that's a massive opportunity. And I think for me that's where the hackers or the entrepreneurs can play a role. How am I doing on time here? So how do you get there? This is where I wanted to have a 10 list of 10 items that you can do to magically solve this problem or to go after this opportunity. And I don't think it's that simple. I really don't. I think as we've seen in a lot of the presentations over the last few days, it's a cultural question. It's a bit of a technology question. It's a mindset question. But I think the most important thing is to ask the right questions. Right? I don't think the question is when do we implement this piece of technology, or what's the uptake among our competitors on this particular piece of technology. I don't think that's the right question at all. The question is the same as the question that you've been asking all along if you're still a major retail brand. And that question is, how do I deliver the best product and the best experience I can to the largest number of the appropriate customers that I can in service of the business and the brand that it sits upon? I think those are the same questions you ask all the time. And if you look around the world and you say, well, yeah, how could we do more of that? Probably, almost certainly, a lot of the answer is going to have something to do with technology. It's not going to be about the technology. It's going to be about the technology being there to service that question. So you got to ask the right questions. And I know that's a little bit of a lightweight thing to suggest, but I don't think it's any fancier than that. I think it's actually quite simple. And that's part of getting that entrepreneurial culture back, cleaving it back from the reality of operating, either on your own as a public company or in a large group that's a public company and being in the retail business, or also, frankly, being part of a 6 or 7 or 8 generation old family that continues to privately run one of the world's luxury houses. Those are complex situations. Asking the right questions helps get them easier. Everyone always says play to your strengths, and I think that's actually kind of the safe path that's not going to get you where you want to go. I think play to your weaknesses. You got to play to your strengths naturally. Your strengths are exceptional product. Your strengths are the brand legacy. Your strengths are being able to communicate with that customer in a way that she understands that you're delivering all of those things. But also, you've got to play to the fact that there are things happening that you don't know enough about, right? You've got to steer your strategy in those directions with enough confidence that, and this is kind of at the core of what it means to be an entrepreneur, to be a hacker, which is you know that you don't know that thing, and so you're going to move in that direction because strategically it's important, and you're going to figure it out as you go. You're going to take steps in that direction. You're going to mitigate the exposure, so you're not messing everything up because you don't know something, but you're actually going to inch in that direction. You're going to learn as you go. And I think it's easy when you're a big company. It's very hard to do that when you're a big company. It's easier to say, well, we're going to stay where we're strong. It doesn't mean trying everything. It means being a little bit more systematic and allowing yourself to move in directions that have felt uncomfortable in the past. Otherwise, you're not going to get there. And I think also getting the right help at the right time is probably the last piece I would say. I think what happens is that a lot of companies say, well, we'll figure this out. It's a little too soon for us to to move in this direction. And then they're talking about it, and the whole world has said, well, you guys it's too late now. You've waited. And then they realize, oh, it's actually too late because everyone's done this. So we're gonna suddenly make that the top priority. We're gonna dump a bunch of money into it, and we're gonna go out and find a big agency to build this for us, and we're gonna spend way too much money to deliver way too little, way too late, and no one's gonna be happy. Not you, not your customer, not your employees, not your shareholders. No one's gonna feel good about it. So the question is, who can help you figure those things out at the right time so you have an outside voice, the right voice saying, or an inside voice who's got this kind of perspective, as Julien was saying, maybe we should actually be trying this out before we make a company-wide decision that's too late. Because making a company-wide decision to steer the ship in this direction is a hard decision to make, and it's naturally, by definition, going to take too long. Let's try some experiments. Let's be entrepreneurial about it. Let's not bet everything on it, but let's bet something on it. Let's understand it. Let's go after it. And I think that's kind of at the core of what it means to be an entrepreneur. And for those entrepreneurs in the room who have worked or who do work at a big company, that's exactly where the tension lies, right? You want to be able to move fast. You want to be able to break some things if you need to, and know that if you break this piece of glass, that the whole thing doesn't shatter over there, right? Isolate it, do some tests, go after it. Don't be afraid to get it wrong before you get it wrong on a massive scale and also did so far too late. The whole thing is not so mysterious. The technology side of things, and I've had a chance to talk to a lot of people in this room over the last couple of days and see all these presentations, and I don't think anybody here is mystified by technology, but I think a lot of us work at companies that have been or are, and I think kind of breaking past the mystery of that and the idea that it's hard to get those things right is important, and I don't think it's quite that hard to do. So like I said, I am staying in town for the next couple of weeks, and I'd love to get to know anyone who's interested in some of these topics and want to toss some ideas around. And if I can help in any capacity, either as in the work that I do or in your efforts in the United States, I'm more than happy to.
Great. You're welcome at the family, by the way.
Thank you.
If you want to do a thing here.